The year was 2010, not too long ago. Scout.com ranking Florida's recruiting class at the head of the class, followed by the usual suspects. So which prospects underachieved? Which ones overachieved? For that, we bring in our insider, Pete Fiutak. Pete, this was a class that brought us the likes of Marcus Lattimore, D. Milliner, William Golston, just to name a few. Not everybody had a success story there in that class.
Not a great class.
A couple of busts, though, in that 2010
Well,
class.
I don't want to call these guys busts necessarily. These are guys that are still trying to figure out their career, starting with Ronald Powell. He was the #1 guy of arguably the #1 recruiting class of the last 25 years. Florida came up with a massive haul of talents, and Powell was the crown jewel of this class. Coming out of California, he could have gone anywhere. All the West Coast teams want him. USC was hot for him. He was considered a humongous get by Urban Meyer, and again, a fantastic class. He hasn't busted out yet. He had 6 sacks. He's starting to become that pass rusher, blew out his knee. He's still trying to come back from that. The second guy on my list here, Kyle Prater, out of Illinois, went to USC. Robert Woods was the #1 wide receiver recruit that year. Prater, a very close #2, 6'5", athletic, lots of talent, was considered to be the next big thing wide receiver along with Robert Woods. Didn't work out there as the rise up of Marquise Lee and Woods. Prater ends up going to Northwestern, trying to resurrect his career with the Wildcats. Third guy on that list, Jake Heaps, the #1 overall quarterback out of Washington. Another guy who could have gone anywhere in the Pac-12, was supposed to be the next great quarterback at BYU. Hasn't quite worked out that way. He's trying to change his career up, transferred to Kansas, trying to make something out of his career.
All right, so let's get back to Heaps. He does have 2 years of eligibility remaining and playing for Charlie Weis. Can Charlie Weis get him to his maximum potential?
If anybody can do it, it's Weis. Now, I'm not necessarily a recruiting talent guy, more of an NFL guy, but I sat there with the recruiting types watching Heaps, and they're all telling me, look how polished this guy is, look how great he is. I personally never saw it. I kind of saw him as just a guy. The ball doesn't necessarily explode out of his hands. He's more of a polished quarterback, not that big. But again, if anybody can do it, Charlie Weis can.
All right, so now let's talk about the overachievers. And one guy at the top of your list here is a young man that really didn't come in with a lot of fanfare at Ohio State, but suddenly we could be talking about him as a first-rounder in the pros.
Yeah, for Ohio State, Bradley Roby was considered a decent prospect for Ohio State, who gets 4- and 5-star talents on a regular basis. Roby was just kind of a guy, and now he's turning out to be this ball-hawking terror of a defensive back. He's probably going to be the best player on their defense going into this year, and like you mentioned, he's going to go play in the pros very soon. Second guy on my list, Adam Muema of San Diego State. Wasn't really thought highly of coming out of high school. Wasn't really wanted by the Pac-12. Colorado had some interest, but that was about it. Very small, very slow, but he's turned out to be great for Rocky Long in San Diego State, over 1,400 yards this year, the centerpiece of their attack. The third guy on my list, Austin Hill out of Arizona. Another one of these guys, didn't necessarily fly under the radar, but wasn't really hot for by a lot of Pac-12 schools. Arizona stuck with him, and now he's turning into their killer deep threat.
All right, let's stick with Hill. 1,300 yards plus receiving, second in the Pac-12 this past season, only to Marquise Lee. So how good is it for him, an opportunity here to play for Rich Rodriguez in that spread offense?
It's good for everybody to play in the Rich Rodriguez spread offense. And he's a deep threat, and he's turning into that guy. Now they have a new quarterback this year. They lose Dan Buckner, wide receiver on the other side, so he's going to be targeted as the #1 guy, keyed on by every defense. But as far as the deep threat is concerned, he's as good as there is in the Pac-12.
Could be some monster numbers for Hill
his hope.
coming up next season. All right, Pete Fiutak, thanks very much for the hits and misses of 2010. For more of Pete's year-by-year look at the recruiting analysis, check back all week. And don't forget to join us on February the 6th for our complete National Signing Day coverage.